What's happening, everyone? My partners in Ian's keeping it real. What's happening, everyone, and welcome to Chile Boxing Talk. Got the homies with me, George with Off the Ropes Boxing and MMA, the hired gun of HCP, Run PMC, and the one and only Nopal Boxeanos. And man, thank you guys so much for joining us. Looks like we've got some people up here in the chat already. Nando's listening at work, man. Hope it's a nice shift, bro. Thanks for chiming in. JC is here as always, man. Well, dude, let's get into it. You know, there's a lot of shit to talk about. How you guys doing, man?
Doing great. Doing absolutely great. How about you, man?
Man, you know, I'm doing good. I'll tell you what, George, I feel like my universe is in alignment. Let me tell you about my Saturday. I had just such a beautiful Saturday. Everything just fell into place. And let's start with giving a shout out to our friend, Cody Crowley, who beat Josecito Lopez in a one-sided dominant fashion, in my opinion. I believed in Cody Crowley. We all broke it down. I heard from the people that I respect. A lot of people said this fight was going to be close, but I didn't think so. So you know what? I put down a little bit of money. This is the biggest bet I've ever made in my whole life, right? I saw Cody Crowley. He was doing the meditating, you know what I mean? He and I, you know, we're both spiritualists, right? So, you know, I had faith that everything was just going to go my way. You know, if you could see, if I had my banner here, you can see that I got some Oracle cards down there, you know, so you know I'm all about it. You know what I mean? So he was becoming one. I was becoming one. I was meditating. I said, you know what, Carlos? That's my name, Carlos. Put down some money on this fight, and I did. So I dropped a little stack. I put $2,000 on Cody Crowley to win $444.44. Now, all fours. Four is a numerology, you know, and this is the only time I'm going to get woo on you guys. Four is a numerology, means stability, foundation. And things just started going my way, man. So I won that. So I was able to breathe a little bit. You know what I mean? And to make this only a little bit sweeter, you guys know, right? Not only do I like Cody Crowley, but I don't like Robert Garcia. It's just the petty thing in me. I don't like him. And I don't like Mikey Garcia. And it was just a little cherry on the top that Cody Crowley beat down Josecito Lopez. You know, and while we're on the subject, I want you guys to think about this while I tell my story. Why is it okay for Robert Garcia to tell shot fighters like Josecito Lopez or his prime fighters to go out on their shield and to go for it, right? But Special Mikey gets the special treatment, and he doesn't get told anything like that when he's in the corner. I want you guys to think on that for a little bit as I continue my story. So congratulations to Cody Crowley. Very happy about that. And then we went on to the Ugas fight, and I'll tell you this, like I predicted this Spence Ugas fight almost perfectly, you know, and we're going to slow it down. We're going to talk about this because everybody's so damn excited about Crawford versus Spence, as they should be. That, you know, it's only Wednesday, man. And you know what? We got to slow things down and talk about this particular fight, you know, and I called this one right. And we're going to get into it because that was a great fight in and of itself. And we're going to get into Spence versus Crawford. But Ugas got his face all fucked up. And the only person that could save him, somebody else I don't like, the legendary Stitch Duran, who couldn't do jack shit. And also, like, you know, and all of a sudden he wasn't so legendary. Nobody was like, what's Ugas going to be able to do? Can Stitch save him? I didn't hear nothing like that. And then, you know, we all know Stitch trying to get some camera time, injuring poor Ugas. Watch this. Get the fuck off of me. You know, come on, man. Stitch Duran's never seen a camera he didn't like. He knows where the hard camera is at all times. You know what I'm saying? So that's kind of how my day's going so far. But I do want to know, like, before we get into it, I just want to know, like, do I have a point despite the special Mikey Garcia get special treatment? George, like, you know, you're a neutral guy. You know, you've heard my point, and, you know, you guys are mostly objective anyways. I'm the only guy who's petty about this. Like, do I have a point on this?
I mean, the way I look at it, if you're pointing it out, you're obviously seeing something, right? So, I mean, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that you're overlooking something, but, you know, my eyes are going to see something differently from what your eyes are going to see. So I'm gonna ride with you, man. You're my homie. So I'm going to say, you know what? Now I'm really going to pay attention. Now I'm really going to look back at some of these fights, but I could see it, you know, in the Josecito Lopez. I remember we were kind of texting in our little group, and I'm like, you know, I think Robert Garcia might end up stopping this. And it was starting to look like that because he started to ask him to do a little bit more, to go out on his shield. So I just got to look back. I want to look back. But as far as special treatment, I mean, yeah, that is baby bro, right? I mean, you're going to look out for baby bro and, you know, give him all the, I guess, all the proper advice or whatever it is that you and your brother have a connection at doing. But hey man, like for me, I'm gonna have to go back and look at this, and if you're pointing it out and you're seeing it, brother, I agree with you too.
Oh yeah, man. All you gotta do is take a look at that Spence fight. It's all about, what Baby Bro's comfortable with. Anybody else, if he's got a champion, go in there. Don't pay any respect to this dude. Get in there. Josecito, you gotta get in there. Like, what are you waiting for? This is your last chance. There's no tomorrow. So that's all I'm saying. Special Mikey, who everybody thinks is special, not me, gets the special treatment. Run. Am I tripping? I know you've been following this with me for a long time. Like, what are your thoughts?
I think it's pretty simple that Mikey is more of a brand than some of Robert's other fighters. And then so you're trying to protect that brand. And in a sport like boxing, it might be easier to do that by saying, well, he didn't stop me. He might have shut me out or been like 10-2, 11-1. Speaking about the Spence fight for Mikey. But if in any other sport, like if you're in basketball, baseball, football, you're going to play to the final whistle and you're going to try, even if you're getting blown out by like 30 points. But in boxing, sometimes I feel like it might just be some of the fans as of late have just they think it's fine, like, oh, my guy survived. It's like, no, a loss is a loss. And I would rather see as a boxing fan wanting to see competitive fights, I'd rather see them go out on their shield. And even if Mikey got stopped or knocked down a few times, at least he was going for the if he was going for the stoppage against Errol Spence, or because that's the only way he was going to win, would be I would have respected that a lot more than sort of just fist pumping after he got outlanded like 60 punches to 5 in a round. But as for Josecito Crawley, I think great performance by Crawley. He's taken the just steps and steps up. And with Josecito, I mean, great career. I mean, he was definitely like a like stealing from Glenn Johnson, the Road Warrior, and he definitely took on everyone. Took on Canelo after he beat Victor Ortiz, and I thought he actually beat Jesse Vargas it was on the Floyd Mayweather Victor Ortiz undercard. I thought he won that fight, and it's been said before that he was very competitive with Marcos Maidana up until he was stopped, and he was beating Andre Berto up until he was stopped. So it's nothing that he didn't win a championship, but even like you see some of the ES News videos like the last year, 2 years, is Josecito slowing down a little just with his speech, and you don't need to see anything serious happen. And he's definitely not a defensive style, so that's only going to get worse when you're older. So I think nothing wrong with that. I don't know what he has like going on. Like a guy like John Molina became a sheriff. I don't know if Josecito has other business ventures he's into, but great career for him.
Totally. And Nopal, you know how I feel, man. But before you get into it, Nopal, I just want to say, now that you're actually here, Nando, now that you're actually here, JC, welcome, brothers. Glad that you guys are here. OJ22 in the house. Thank you so much for joining us. Nopal, you know how I've been feeling about this, man. Like, and you've been tracking it since day one. Am I right or am I wrong, or what do you think?
I think you're absolutely right, and I like the way Ron put it. Mikey, Puro Pinche Mikey is a brand. He's become just a brand basically, and to address the special part, I don't think he's special. I think if you compare him to a guy like Triple G, I think he's got 60% of the skill that Triple G has. And if you went and compared him to like a Canelo, I think he only has like 40% of Canelo's, skill. So as far as special, he isn't nothing special. So, and the rest about it, yeah, I guess they're trying to protect him. So, of course, they're not going to talk down on him. They're not going to make him look bad, even in the corner, because there is mics. So, if they say, Mikey, you're losing this fight, you're going to make Mikey look bad. So, you got to be on camera 24/7 with his ass, and watch what you say, because you're going to make him look bad. And yeah.
Well, all I can say, man, is if you're buying into this product, still, you're a sucker. Okay. But I'm going to let it go because you know what? Like I said, the universe gave me a lot of gifts this weekend and I got to clean out the karma. I got to start gravitating towards the light because Canelo versus Bivol's coming, right? And I don't want karma to smack me. Okay. So I'm going to start getting cool after I talk about the Spence Ugas fight, which we're going to get into next, man, because, man, dude, I'll tell you, the news cycle goes by so quickly, but this was one hell of a fight. There's a lot to break down in the fight in particular. So I want to talk about this fight, and then we're going to get into Spence versus Crawford. George, man, please tell us your thoughts. Dude, this was one hell of a fight to watch. I really enjoyed it, man. What did you think? What were your takeaways?
My takeaways to begin with, I think a lot of questions were answered, right? Everybody wanted to know what Spence was going to show up. How was the eye going to hold up? How was the layoff? And all those were answered, and I think that's why a majority of us picked Ugas, and it wasn't because we thought Ugas was better. We just wasn't. for me, I picked Ugas because, you know, the skills there. Like I feel like Ugas did some. He did. You know what? After about the 7th round, and he said it too, and everybody started to notice. And I think that maybe the 6th is when the eye injury happened. Is when he most likely he got fractured, because you can see he just completely went into a shell. He wasn't really trying to do much. But again, the answers, the questions that everybody had were answered right then and there. And I even I put it on me probably in Twitter, Instagram. I even messaged it in the group. But I feel like this was probably the best Spence that we've seen. This was like the Cal Brooks Spence, you know, where not that he was tested, but it was a little bit competitive in the beginning, but he won those rounds, obviously. And he just showed his grit, his body work, as always, excellent body work, great jab. The uppercuts, I mean, every uppercut he was throwing, he was freaking landing, man. And you see it. And just because Ugas lost doesn't mean that Ugas isn't elite or isn't skilled or isn't a champion. There's levels to it, right? I mean, Spence just showed his level here. I was very impressed. And again, these questions everybody had were answered. His eye held up. He said he was a little shaky at first. I mean, from my standpoint, I didn't really see too much shakiness. Like I said, he looked to me like the old Spence, if not better. I'm very impressed, and you know, let's see what happens next, man. Hopefully that fight does get made. He called it out. He told Crawford, you know what, keep my belts for him. I'm coming for him. Hey, a great performance by Spence. I mean, if I could grade it from, you know, A to F, I definitely give him a solid A on this performance.
I think it was a good performance by Spence as well. Ugas has nothing to be ashamed of. I mean, he played it out there. He fought as hard as he could, especially with the injuries that he sustained throughout the fight. And I was happy to see that Spence was back at where we think he should be. I mean, he had a little. I think he was a little down versus Sean Porter, and that was a tougher fight for him. Even though I think he clearly won that fight, I don't think that fight was as close as a lot of people say it was. And I think he was down versus Danny Garcia as well. And I think maybe even the Mikey fight, because I don't always believe when the fighters are like, "Oh, I just wanted to go out box." Because I think if Spence tried to box Ugas, he would have had possibly an easier fight. But I just think sometimes they're off and they're maybe not focused in training camp. But I mean, I think I'm biased though towards Spence because I've got to see him in the Olympics and got to see his whole career. And then I've only followed Crawford really since 2012 when he was Tim Bradley's chief sparring partner for Manny Pacquiao. So I just think more biased towards Spence. But that being said, I think Spence is back where he needs to be. I don't know how much longer he can hold at 147 because he to me in the last few fights he does look smaller. I think he's losing muscle mass, and then he's bringing in like a new strength coach, bringing in a nutritionist. So that's proof in itself that he is having trouble at the weight that he needs people to help him manage his weight and his training more. So, I mean, he looked good to me, and I don't know. I mean, I think still the best Spence we saw, in my opinion, is 2018 when he fought Lamont Peterson. I think that was like complete, like where it was the inflection point of like his physicality, his being comfortable at the weight, and then his aggressiveness and punching power. And a guy like Lamont Peterson, who really is like very, very durable fighter, he put down and he really destroyed him. But I'm excited to see the fight, and then I'm sure we'll go after the predictions for the Crawford Spence fight next. So I'll hold that.
Can I just interject really quick? I'm wearing a shirt right here, Boxing and Chill. As you can see, guy in the chat right there, he's a new follower. I just put him on to following, you know, Chicano Prophet out Chile. He has an Instagram, you know, Mr. Boxing Guru. If anybody's interested, he does shirts, Boxing and Chill. I just told him, hey man, you know what? Come on, follow us. I'll give you a shout out. I just want to give him a shout out. Again, follow him on Instagram, Mr. Boxing Guru. Thank you. Page is really cool, man. Different colors with shirts. So just want to send a shout out to the dude real quick.
Yeah, man. Thanks very much for joining us. I saw that he subscribed to me today, so I subscribed to him. Didn't have a chance to check out his videos yet, man, but I always love new content and new perspectives. So welcome. Thank you so much for joining us, man. And then Nando here says, is the PBC going to take the heat off of Spence versus Bud? Wouldn't be the first time. Could it be a massive trilogy? The time is now. We're going to get into that here in a second, Nando. But first, Nopal, you watched the fight, man. What'd you think about this? And would you classify it as dominated or people are getting sensitive about the verbiage of how we describe this. Would you consider this like a demolished, dominated, one-sided beatdown? Like, how would you classify this fight?
Well, I just want to start off by saying that I was completely wrong. I thought it was just going to be a 7-5 type of victory, and Spence really he surprised me, and he was able to get the stoppage uh, from Ugas. And the thing about Ugas, I said it before, is he doesn't actively go out and really win rounds. He just kind of like from afar, he follows you a little bit and waits for you to come in, and then he swings with you, trying to get something in there. And I think it's a thing that we all should realize is that these amateur boxers, it's two totally different sports. There's a different way to win a fight when you're in the amateurs. And so hopefully with this new thing where they're going to let the Cubans start being pros a little earlier, or they're going to let them be pros out here, hopefully with this they start uh thinking about boxing in a whole different way, because it's going to become monetary now for them. So they're going to start, training their guys a little different, and, we'll see some more Cubans with that killer instinct and all that. I know, as far as Ugas, he missed a golden opportunity. They're surfacing this all over Twitter, where he basically had, people are saying that was already a knockdown. I don't know if the mouthpiece fell out or something like that. But if it would have been anybody else, they would have, no matter what the ref said, stop or whatever, I would have jumped on it. I would have made the ref separate me, I would have tried to get that knockdown, because we've seen the ref trying to interject in between like the heavyweights and like fights like that. And they don't stop, They even manage to get a knockdown sometimes, knock the other guy down. And, it's not like they will overrule that and they're still going to call it a knockdown. I've seen that plenty of times. So, that's basically what I got to say as far as, was it a dominant? Well, it was a good one,
Well, I would consider this. Thank you, Nopal. That was excellent as always. I would consider this a one-sided beatdown in my opinion. Like, okay, so I agree with most of you guys. Like, this was a very good fight, and I think that Ugas made a very good account of himself early. I liked how comfortable he was in the pocket, and his counterpunching was on point. Like I knew that he wasn't going to be able to do like that back foot thing. I think that some people wanted like Ugas to represent something like outside of a pick, like he just it's just one fighter versus another. He happens to be Cuban, but I didn't think that meant that he could go on his back foot and do what's quote unquote the Cuban style. Like we've already broken down that the all-time greats don't necessarily have that style, like in Cuban boxing, the Cuban all-time greats. And so Ugas had his own very nice skill set. I always thought he was good. He's still good. But, I thought that if we see the Spence, that we're supposed to see, and the Spence that the odds reflect, which I also mentioned, I felt like the odds were very wide for this fight. Nobody was talking about it. Like, at the very end, it was I think Ugas was like a negative, a plus 450. You could bet, 100 and get your 100 back and win $450 back. And nobody was licking their chops. I think Calix was the only guy I saw place a bet, and ordinarily, like when, you think the other guy's going to win and you're about to get 5-1 on your money, people are putting their money down, excited about it. But I was hearing a lot of Ugas picks, but I just didn't really get that. I didn't get that excitement, that buzz. It was kind of like, I don't know. I think everybody talked themselves up into it being okay to pick Ugas, but like, in my opinion, like it obviously didn't play out that way. I felt like Spence came and he brought it just like I said he would. His jab was very, very good. I mean, we all knew that he had a good jab, and so does Ugas, but the way he came out with it was very impressive. Like, I'm used to his like thudding, very good timing, also offsetting type jab, but he kind of used his jab the way Lomachenko uses his jab, just like up and down, very busy initially. You know what I mean? And he started closing the pocket on Ugas. Ugas started countering with his own jab, but Spence was doing a lot of things to neutralize Ugas early on. And just his activity, like his offense was a great defense, in my opinion. Like I mentioned, Ugas was really comfortable in that shell, guarding up, guarding down, sliding. I was impressed, but there was a couple things. One, I did mention that, yeah, Ugas is like 35, 36. He's older. That was a factor for me. And I thought he wasn't going to be able to keep up with the attrition. He was just going to keep taking abuse and he was going to start slowing down. And that's sure enough, in my opinion, what happened. Like on top of that, too, I think that Spence did outbox Ugas. I think people aren't giving Spence enough credit for the excellent boxing that he did. he decided to come in because it benefited him, but he was also good on the outside. But he was able to come in at will, was able to take punches. Like I said, he would take punches to land punches, but it was technical in my opinion. Like if you watch that fight, he'll come in, he'll step in, right, and then he would lower himself and then put his arms near his hips, right, so that Ugas couldn't tie up. And that's something else I said. I said, will Ugas be able to tie up? I don't know, but Spence took away that play. And then when he was down crouched on Ugas's shoulders and his collar, like he would hit and he would smack, right? And Ugas couldn't see where it was coming, but sometimes Ugas was smart enough to anticipate it. So he would also counter. You would also move his feet. A lot of good inside fighting the whole time, like a lot of good movement in this one. So, I did appreciate both sides of it. And it was very competitive in my opinion. I think Ugas deserved to be there. But ultimately, I think that the better man just simply won. He simply won. Spence was very impressive in my opinion. You can make an argument that like Danny Garcia won more rounds against Spence than Ugas did. In fact, the odds for that fight were closer, So, I mean, these were little things that I saw ahead of time. And I thought, well, I'll let everybody make their pick. And like I said, I respect everybody who picked Ugas, but like to me, I don't know, man. To me, it was kind of a clinic, like if you win maybe 2 rounds and you're getting beat down, and if the fight continues, just going to continue to get beat down even more, and then they stop the fight because of what's going on, right? And you can't take no more. Like to me, that's a one-sided beatdown. But Ugas made a good account of himself. Does anybody have anything on that?
No, he hit good. Oh, go ahead, Ron. Go ahead.
I was just real quick. I was going to say, I think it was competitive early, but I just think the way I think about it is just because something's competitive doesn't mean the other guy's winning rounds just because they're competitive rounds. Because like, if we want to talk about like scorecards, and I know this varies than a lot of people, and I might get some backlash for my scorecard, but I only had Ugas winning 2 rounds in the whole fight, and those were rounds 1 and 6. And those were both swing rounds for me. And the rest I just had competitive rounds, but I had Spence winning the rest of the rounds because I just think Ugas's volume was too low. Like he was being effective when it was, but when you have someone that's just throwing as much as Spence did, I think it was overwhelming, and especially for the way you would that's funny. I didn't even see that.
Well, sometimes see this is my timing. I told you my universe is in alignment right now. Isn't this great?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Ron. Go ahead, man. This is the average scorecard based on an app of 558 submissions. Go ahead, Ron.
Yeah, I was just saying that I feel like the scorecards from the judges were getting some backlash, and I thought the scoring was good because I just don't think Ugas was being as he was being effective when he was, but when you're getting like the avalanche of punches that were coming from Spence, it's hard to when you land 1 or 2 punches to I mean not 1 or 2 punches, but 1 or 2 punches at a time to just really outwork Spence, who's throwing just like 6 body shots in a row and landing like 4 of them. It's just really hard for me to justify giving rounds to Ugas, but not saying Ugas didn't do well. He gave a great account for himself, but I think that is what it was. And also one thing I want to add is that I think people are sort of forgetting that they act like Spence I think he was hurt to an extent when when that mouthpiece fell out, and then he was hit by Ugas when he wasn't looking. But I said this in the group chat. It was like a Victor Ortiz, Floyd Mayweather, Joe Cortez moment where he wasn't even looking and got hit. And then I think it should have been a knockdown because he fell into the ropes and they kept him up. But after that, he didn't do it as effectively as Floyd Mayweather against Shane Mosley, but he started winning the round at the end. I still 10-8 round, or 10-9 round to Ugas. But I just don't think that people are acting like, oh, he was hurt. I don't think he would have gotten finished because Ugas did have the chance to finish him and he didn't finish him. And then people are saying, oh, but the what's his name, Lawrence Cole was giving him too much time. But then I was looking at the ABC rules of boxing, which the unified rules were for this fight, and then it looked like Lawrence Cole did exactly what he was supposed to do. He just waited because it says it's Rule 6 in the ABC boxing rules that all boxers are required to wear a mouthpiece. No round can begin without a mouthpiece in both boxers. And then if a mouthpiece is dislodged, the referee will call time and have the mouthpiece replaced at the first opportune moment without interfering with immediate action. And Ugas stepped back, so that's the first opportune time. Obviously, some refs let it go longer, but I think he was fine in that. But nevertheless, it was a very entertaining fight.
Oh yeah, and Nano here says the black canvas might have camouflaged the mouthpiece. Well, I'll tell you, like my opinion based on watching that sequence. Like, I think that people are overstating, and we mentioned this, like how hurt Spence was. Like, I don't think he was that hurt in general. Like, he kind of had like a like a delayed, like, I don't know, kind of comeback too, but he wasn't like on Queer Street, in my opinion. I think maybe there was something that got to him, or maybe his equilibrium was all jacked up. But I've seen Deontay Wilder in much worse condition against like Luis Ortiz. I think when Jose Cotto, Miguel Cotto's brother, clipped Canelo early in his career, like I thought that was worse. Like this was kind of just like a weird, like, oh, okay, I'm back. Then he was into it. His mouthpiece knocked out. He went right for it. He should have protected himself, just like you should at all times if you're a boxer. So, I mean, that's kind of on him. And then he kind of got knocked into the roast, but that's because he wasn't really prepared for what was going on. But like, there was still plenty of round left. So like this idea that like Spence was hurt, I think people use the word hurt too much, and it's very vague in my opinion. Hurt, like all these punches hurt. Like, does hurt mean in trouble? If it doesn't mean in trouble, then I don't know what you're saying.
Yeah, even blocking hurts too. So if you ever blocked a punch,
man.
yeah, no, you guys are right. I think for the most part, I think most of everybody had it just like that. Ugas winning the first round and that sixth round. And of course it was competitive. You saw flashes in the first round. Is kind of what I thought how Ugas was going to fight. He was good on his footwork. Like he wasn't like moving back. He was stepping back away from punches. He was stepping to the side away from Spence, but Spence showed his boxing, how superior his boxing really is. He showed that Ugas does really well against fighters that come forward or that kind of weight. Like Spence gave him no chance to really think about what to do. He attacked when he should. He was in range when he should. He went to the body. He jabbed with Ugas. His jab was obviously stronger, or it hurt more, I guess you could say. But I mean, I'm sure I'm impressed as well. I was really impressed with Spence, how he fought this fight against Ugas. And again, I think people that picked Ugas or went with Ugas is because they weren't sure exactly what Spence we were going to see. Because, yeah, he fought against Danny Garcia. I think that was the first fight after the accident. He won, of course, convincingly. But for me, I felt like there was a couple things that he didn't look like 100% there or 100% Spence. So I think, that's what it was. And then for me, if I line up Ugas versus Danny Garcia, and of course styles make fights, I would favor Ugas slightly. So that's kind of another factor for me is why I picked. I thought Ugas had a chance to beat Spence, but in that sequence, actually, Ring IQ showed a video. I don't know if you guys caught it on Twitter. I think maybe like 5 seconds before the mouthpiece came out, Ugas kind of hit him with kind of like a right hand, and you see him kind of take like a stumble back, but it looked to me more of like an off. It looked like it threw him off balance a little bit, and then that's when, the punch came with the mouthpiece. And I think Lawrence Cole, in those moments, we could sit here and we could try to dissect what the referee should have did, what Ugas should have did, what Spence should have did. But I think in the heat of the moment, it's a championship fight. I think you're just trying to make all the right choices and not try to stir up. Try to stir up controversy of, oh, wow, he should have just let Ugas continue because it was in the heat of the action. But I just think it was just the heat of the moment. Lawrence Cole thought in his mind, he probably thought he did the right thing. Some of us felt like, yeah, Ugas should have went after Spence, but it happened. Spence won, so we know what's next. Let's happen. Let's make it happen.
Yeah, we're about to get into that, but you know what? Those are great points. And it's a totally fair consideration when you're making a prediction. Like, trust me, like if Spence had gone in there and just gotten clipped and was lights out and we didn't understand why, like Ugas isn't a KO puncher. I'd have been here been like, oh, that guy's not the same. Or, if it was an injury, it was an injury, like it's something to factor. Just like age, wear and tear is also definitely a factor, or any type of injuries. Like you have to assess everything. Like the weight cut, that's always a factor too, Ron. We've talked about that with like Teofimo, and now you're talking about that with Spence, and he's starting to look a little dry at 147. So I mean, you have to assess everything, and I think it's always valid to go ahead and state how you feel, because they are all factors.
Most definitely, like the weight cut. I think. I mean, I'll get into a little more when we do the prediction, but for Crawford, but I think like I've said before, every dog has his day. Like even the iron chinned fighters like Chavez Jr., he had his day. Brandon Rios, who I really enjoyed watching, he had his day against Danny Garcia. And like in no way, like Danny Garcia's power punches his left hook. In no way do I think a step back right hand, like off balance sort of counter would put down a prime Brandon Rios against Dan. There's no way.
Right.
So it's everyone has their wear and tear, and that's when they stick around at certain weight classes, or they're just naturally big dudes. and then they just have to suck down. And I think when you see the body change, and I think I saw a body change in Spence, just like you see in Sean Porter at the end, that some things like their chin might go.
All right. Well, hopefully we do get it next because, well, Errol Spence has cleaned up his side of the street. So we'll see, man, if it's really time, man, because you know what? I mean, and everybody's talking about it, but I just want to say congratulations to Errol Spence. Man down, strap season. Sean, I hope you're enjoying this one, man. You know, he hasn't had a chance to cook on it yet, but I hear that he might go on tomorrow, you know, so I want to congratulate him because hell, man, you know, like people need to enjoy this win for a second at least before we start talking about all the other shit. But yeah, man, I want to talk about it. Crawford versus Spence, man. Looks like it's going to go down, dude. You know, I'm pumped. I want to know what you guys think. George, like, what are your early impressions about this fight actually going down? And hell, you know, we're going to make predictions and really break down some film when it happens because I think that this fight actually deserves like actual analysis from a lot of people, you know, if you're inclined to do that kind of thing. But just off the top of your head, based on the new information you have, because we always assess new information, you've seen the new and improved, the current version of Spence now. You know what you got with him. What do you think about this fight?
I mean, after Spence's performance, so before getting into it more, of course, obviously, you know, we were talking off camera. We're mentioning that there's a lot of people picking Crawford because their pick of Ugas got beat. But I could sit here and tell you, even before the Ugas fight was ever made, even last year, like I rode with Crawford. Like Crawford is one of my favorite fighters, even though we haven't really seen him do too much at 147. Like I'm overall impressed with his career. Joe Habib, he talks highly on Crawford. I know when Crawford was going through his whole ordeal with Bob Arum, which is I'm sure is still going on, he brought up a point, or he brought up a fact about Crawford. I guess he's the only current champion right now. I could be wrong. I could be off by a number or not, but it's either 8 or 9 fights in a row that he's had as a champion that he's won by knockout. The only current champion right now, you know, that you know, that's over Canelo, that's over Usyk, that's over Tyson Fury, that's over Errol Spence. The only current champion right now that has 8 wins, defending with a championship belt. So that's pretty impressive. Yes, at 147, I think I'm with everybody on it. Like, why haven't some of these fights been made for him that we want to see? I don't know. Is it Bob Arum? You know, people speculate. Is it his attitude? Is he hard to work with? What is it? For me, I feel like your attitude is gonna matter, but at the end of the day, he's a boxer. Like, no one's gonna judge him for his personality, right? Like, look at Floyd Mayweather. People love what he does inside the gym, but they don't like what he does outside the gym. So it still didn't stop Floyd Mayweather from doing what he did in the ring. And I feel the same thing with Crawford. If Crawford is a hard person to work with, I feel like that still shouldn't matter. Like, he's in there doing what he's supposed to do. He's beating the guys that he's been put in there with. But again, I mean, we want to see him, you know, fight obviously the better competition at 147. But offhand, even after this performance, like I'm still riding with Crawford, but a little bit less. And that's with the performance that we've seen with Errol Spence. And I feel like every fighter in any sport in general, when you have that level of competition, you're going to show up. Sometimes, you know, we've seen, again, with Danny Garcia, Errol Spence, you know, he didn't look he looked impressive, but he didn't look like what he did against Ugas. And I feel like the fight against Ugas, there was a reason for a fight. There was a reason to get up for this fight, right? It was to win a bout. It was to get the 3rd bout out of the 4 bouts. So he showed up to the level of competition, which is Ugas. And I think here with this one, level of competition against Crawford, I think Crawford, there's just something about Crawford for me. I think it's just like his grit. I think it's just like his toughness. And, you know, like in boxing, they always say, hey, you know what? Don't, you know, give a punch. Just because you took a punch doesn't mean you got to give a punch right away, because sometimes that could be dangerous. But I feel with Crawford, he actually does really well with that. When he gets hit, you see him land 2 more other shots, and you've seen it against the Porter fight. You've seen very close fight. I don't remember what I had it scored, but I remember it was very close. I was even worried that, you know what, Porter might pull this one off if Porter could win the next couple of rounds late. But you know, I just feel like it's that toughness and that grit. I feel like Crawford has kind of like that second gear, or he has kind of like those extra tools to pull out. And I think switching southpaw to right hand or orthodox will help him against Spence. But again, it's gonna be a really good fight, and we message each other all the time during when there's fights or even during the week. I feel, to me, if this fight gets made now, I feel like it would be bigger than the Pacquiao and Mayweather. I could be talking out of my ass, or I could be crazy or whatever, but I mean, just for me, it's they're prime for prime. They're fighting for a reason, and not just fighting for a big paycheck. They're fighting because there's unification, for all the bouts at 147. They're both in their prime, like right at their prime. So this fight has to happen. This fight happens now. I feel that it would be bigger than Pacquiao and Mayweather. And unfortunately, that fight didn't happen in time. But I'm riding with Crawford, man.
Dude, that was a great breakdown. And you know what? You're right, man. It's hard not to get excited about this fight. Like, I've been thinking about this fight. Even when I thought I was over the fight, once it became like a reality that it could happen, man, I've just been thinking about it ever since. Boxing Republic. Hey, Nancy, thank you so much for joining us. Nando here says he likes Crawford, but where's the context? That resume still fluffy, though, regardless of excuses or finger pointing. Run PMC, what do you think about what Nando has to say, and what are your overall thoughts about this fight, man?
I think there is some truth in Nando's comment. I mean, Crawford has achieved a lot, but it was mostly at 140. I think his best win to date probably is the Porter win this last go around, and that's my opinion. But at the same time, Sean was at the end of it, and then even his dad was saying that. I mean, Sean Porter was one of my favorite boxers. So, but even his dad was saying he stopped it because he just couldn't. He couldn't see Sean taking that punishment. And Sean didn't train that hard for that fight, or he said something to that extent where it's like the training camp wasn't where he wanted it to be. And it's like to have your own dad say that about you. I mean, maybe Sean wasn't preparing as much, and then he was saying like even for the fights preceding that, he wasn't preparing the same. But all that being said, Crawford's a great fighter, and I think I'm biased, like I said earlier, about because I do think I'm a bigger Spence fan than Crawford fan, but I've Crawford beating Spence in this one, and in this fight, I think solidified it for me, just because I think, like I said, I'm not the biggest like breaker. Like I don't break down film that much. I just go with my gut feeling usually on fights and just look at the facts presented to us as fans. And I just think Spence, like he said, he has a nutritionist. He's on a diet. He has a new strength coach, like I said earlier. He's having issues with the weight. And Ugas is a puncher, but he's not a big puncher. Granted, Spence was buzzed by that punch. I don't think he was hurt. He was buzzed, and he was sent off balance. I think it was more of a balance issue, but I just think that Spence, like I said earlier, the chin's going to go one day. And I think that day is closer than we think if he stays at 147, because he even on the, what was it? I think it was the Porter Way podcast when they had him on probably like a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago. He was saying, they're asking, like Sean was like poking, like, oh, where are you at with weight? And then he's like, oh, you know how I do. I'm pretty heavy right now. But I've like, he was basically saying he has his weight cut down. So when I think about pretty heavy, I would think about 147 guys like dipping in the like close to the 170 mark. So if he was like 165, 170 on fight night, that's a pretty big jump. And that's with the aid now of a nutritionist and his new strength coach who's probably monitoring his training more. So it's with that being said, I think Crawford, even though his style is changing at the upper weight classes, like the great ones do, they do adapt. But I think he's going to edge Spence. But that being said, if this was 2018, right at the beginning when Crawford moved up to fight Horn, I think 2018 Spence and Porter would have both broken down Terrence Crawford and won. But I think the time is now for Crawford, and I think this last fight solidified that for me.
Great breakdown, Running. I just want some clarification because, I've heard a little bit as far as like going out and listening to what people have to say. Like people have been talking about Spence in the lead up to this fight being in his prime. You said twice that, in your opinion, it's not really like that. Is that right?
What was that, sorry?
Well, just that I've heard people say that Spence is in his prime.
Yeah.
In the lead up to this fight, they're like, "Oh, this is a great fight." Two fighters in their prime. Spence is at his prime. I've heard that. So, based on the things that you've said, you don't necessarily see it that way. Is that right?
No, I don't think Spence is in his prime. I think Spence's prime was Kell Brook, Lamont Peterson, Ocampo, and Mikey Garcia. That's what I think his prime was. And I always think, like, when I look at guys' careers, I think of like their primes and like 4 fight I usually see it like that 4-fight increment where I think their prime is, and then after that it's sort of like over. Like let's just say like another boxer that I really like was like Tim Bradley. I think his prime was really Pacquiao, Provodnikov, Marquez, and that was really it. And that's 3 fights, and it's really like that year and a half where their physicality it intersects with their like boxing ability and their youth. Like all those things when they meet, I think that's their prime. Like people would say, like if I talk about Bradley, like oh Provodnikov he got killed. It's like, but did you see like he was punishing Provodnikov basically out of it when he was out of it the whole fight. But I think Errol Spence's best wins to date would be Kell Brook, but I think he was really Lamont Peterson. Like I said earlier, was when he was like complete beast mode, and then his was the most physical he was, had the punching power, had the legs, and he just wasn't making that crazy of weight cuts because you could just tell like he was like a ghost face when he was in the weight in the weigh-in this time. But I don't know. That's just my opinion. I know other people might not feel that way, but I think, like I said, I think the time is now for Crawford, even though I think he's not in his prime either. I think his prime was at 140, but I just think he has more than Spence does. But like I said, that's the fun of boxing. That's why we have to see the fights, because I might be totally wrong.
Man, that was a great breakdown. Nancy here says that we've seen the past where EJ is out of the gym between fights and gains that weight. Well, let's see if he stays on it, And Nancy, she thought the ship had sailed on this fight. Nando's looking for a trilogy, and he says he disagrees with Run PMC. This was the best version of Spence ever, physically and mentality-wise. Well, we all keep it out Chile, and we all give our own opinions,
Yep.
man, and I respect both you all. So Nopal, what do
definitely.
you think about all this, man?
Well, I never thought that that Spence could beat Crawford. I look at Crawford like a pound-for-pound fighter. I think he could easily move up to 154 and wipe everybody out. I think that that all the dudes that Spence fought, I believe that Crawford would have probably beat them all by knockout. So, like I said, I just see Crawford like a level above. I'm not going to base it off just this Ugas fight, because Ugas is not the guy to base it off of, in my opinion. He, even though Errol Spence did surprise me and beat him, he stopped him. I still believe that Crawford has a lot more tools. He can fight going backwards, going forward. He can body punch a lot, really good. He can, he can switch a southpaw. There's so many things that he's like an all-around fighter. And just mentioning Spence's physical state. I mean, he's up there talking like, slurring his words just like Joe Biden, bro. Maybe that has to be with he should already move up to 154 or 160. But nevertheless, I mean, he should know what's best for him. And that just doesn't look right for me, man. And that's basically what I got to say.
All right, man. So you favor Crawford, and I respect that, man. And the Al Chile crew, the ones that did, I got some people here that picked Spence to win against Ugas and are picking Bud to beat Spence, right? But I haven't seen that anywhere else. And we were talking about that, George, and it doesn't mean anything really, because you could easily have Spence winning, or you could easily have Crawford winning. The odds have come out a little bit early, and it's just like I thought. Spence is a slight favorite. You get even money betting on Crawford, and then I think you have to bet like $1.25 to make $1 betting on Spence. So the odds makers are telling you that this is a close fight. I really like this fight, man. I'm excited at the prospect of these two actually mixing it up. And talking about their primes, I have to agree with Run PMC. Like, I don't really think that either fighter anymore is in their prime. Like, and I've tried to be fair. And sometimes I make points. When I see criticisms about somebody like Canelo or somebody else, I'll make a point and go like, well, how come nobody's giving anybody any heat? I did that with Jamal Charlo, when I was making the point that on average he fights older fighters in Canelo, but doesn't get that reputation. On average, any way you want to look at it, except the fighters that Canelo's fighting typically tend to be either previous champions or reigning defending champions. Some of them being undefeated, but he still gets crap. If you look at Errol Spence, starting with Kell Brook, he started fighting guys in his 30s, with the exception of Ocampo. Everybody else in their 30s couldn't get the 42-year-old Pacquiao, then went for a 35-year-old Ugas. Now he's about to fight a 35-year-old Crawford. Now, Crawford, in my opinion, had his prime at 140 pounds. I think this idea of Crawford going in and being able to use his feet as far as like dancing around in the ring, I think that's gone. But I still think that he has very good footwork in the pocket, So he, like George mentioned, the way he could switch up, I think that's going to be really interesting in the pocket. It's going to be a bunch of movements of different angles inside the pocket. And that's why I said I have to break down more film before I can think more on that and kind of comment on that. But it's going to be a fascinating matchup inside the pocket because I think Spence is going to have no trouble getting to Crawford. One of the things about Crawford is like he's not necessarily like this KO artist, in my opinion. Like he wears you down, but I don't know if Crawford can take the abuse that he's going to get from Spence if it just goes later. Usually Crawford's just going around doing his thing, and then he's hiding the uppercut, and boom, takes you out with the uppercut, and you don't see it, and it's just a masterpiece. And he didn't have to go to that next level, really, right? Or he takes his time at least. Even with Porter, like, he got that notification that, oh, what? Porter's up. Okay, let me go put this guy down. But it's not like Porter was hurt. I mean, he was more pissed off than anything else. It was more just like flash knockdowns, kind of like the way Juan Manuel Marquez would get knocked down. Like, it wasn't like, oh, he got put to sleep. I always said that I thought that stoppage was just shy of premature, but I respected Kenny Porter's decision. But to me, it was slightly premature. It's not like he was in trouble. Porter wasn't in trouble, in my opinion. So is Crawford going to be able to handle the pressure? Like, I don't know. Like he's an excellent counter puncher. I think speed-wise, I think Spence might be a little faster. Like I've always thought like Crawford's speed has always just been okay. He's really good at like throwing a punch and then kind of like maneuvering it where it's supposed to land based on like where he sees you. So, I mean, the guy's got excellent reflexes, but I've never really thought of him as like a fast puncher, and Spence has good speed, right? At least as it's pretty close. Like, I don't know who's faster. You guys would have to let me know what you think, but I think that they're pretty equal. And then I think that Spence is going to have the jab advantage, even though Crawford also has a good jab. I also wonder about if Crawford can afford to do his switches in his stance. Like, I think that if he starts off southpaw or goes southpaw and stays southpaw, then you're going to know that it's really serious right away, and he doesn't have the opportunity to be cute. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying that he's doing it just to show off when he does it, but like if you're at the highest level facing the strongest puncher and probably the most volume you're ever going to face in your whole life, you might just have to stick with what's best for you right away. And also, speaking of like older fighters, shot fighters, like when Crawford fought Brook, like nobody's really talking about it, but Brook did all right early. Like Crawford just doesn't go in and just start walking you down. Like that's not how he operates. And in the meantime, he's going to start taking abuse. That's what makes this a really good fight. But on the other hand, I do see this as a 50-50 fight. I think that Crawford is a beast. I've always really liked him. To me, he's number 2 pound for pound. He's super smart, makes adjustments. He's tough. He also has grit. He doesn't like getting hit and then not responding. Like he likes to give receipts. So I think this fight's going to start off really hot.
Yeah, good points. And I think the difference between Crawford and Spence is when you're watching a Crawford fight, at any given moment, even if it's mid to late, like, he's going to land something and it's going to change the fight. I mean, one thing I don't like about Crawford is he does get hit a little too much. And I don't know if that's because he's vulnerable or is that him, letting you come in and making you make a mistake. But as far as the Porter fight, it was a little early, but I think most of us, at least for me, I knew once he got him down that second time, you knew that Crawford was going to finish him. Crawford is a great finisher. And even if Porter had his legs behind him, like I think Kenny saw so many things flash before his eyes. I think he saw one, Crawford is a great finisher, and he would have finished him even if he would have let that fight continued. And you could see, I think from maybe like round 7 or even 6, you saw that Crawford started to pour it on a little bit, and Porter wasn't as successful as he was early on. And that goes to show, right? His corner's home, like you're down on the cards, and from there the switch went off and he went out and he did what he does. I think he does get hit a little too much for my liking, and I don't know. When I go back to fights, one that I saw where he boxed really well was against Victor Postol, and he fought an undefeated Victor Postol that nobody wanted to fight. He actually fought Postol when Danny Garcia actually gave him some step aside money, or he gave some money so that way he wouldn't fight him. And Crawford ended up fighting Postol next, and just showed that he was at that level at 140. I do think that 140 probably was his best because we've seen him fight a better competition at 140. But I just think he does. I think he does get a little too much. I don't know. It's tough to say. I think we all make great points. And who knows? Spence can actually, capitalize on those moments that Crawford does get hit too much. He might hit him with something that hurts him. But I don't know. Just for me, like I slightly go with Crawford. Like I said, even though if it's not 50-50, like it's slightly less now that I'm picking Crawford. I think I even said before I had it like 55-45. Now it's like 53-47. So it's still pretty damn close for a fight.
Definitely, man. Anybody else have anything on that? All right, man. Well, all I got to say, dude, is looking forward to this. And you all made great points. And I'm going to take a look at everything for a while before I break down and actually predict this fight. Like, I want to give a shout out to the LDBC. Like, man, they're saying a lot of shit that I agree with. Like, they're actually talking sweet science right now, which I love. Not just like loaded gloves. You're all going to see what happens, when Wilder lands the moneymaker. No, like they're talking the sweet science, and they make a lot of points that I agree with. So I like that. I also like how the camps are separating a little bit. There's like the Spence fans and then the Crawford fans, and they're starting to take shots at each other a little bit. Like, it's kind of amusing. Like, I'm just going to sit back and enjoy that. Like, I don't have a dog in the race. I truly like both fighters. All right, man. Well, let's get into it, dude. It's time for us to do our controversial rescore. And since Fury's fighting this weekend, I thought we'd go back and take a little look at Wilder versus Fury, the first one. And this takes place with Fury coming back after a couple tune-ups as the lineal champion, right? Got back in shape to face the WBC champion, Deontay Wilder, both undefeated. And we went back and we took a look at it. We want to know, a lot of people just happened to just call this one a robbery. The narrative right away was that Fury was robbed, and this is a modern-day robbery, so we're going to take a look at it. George, tell us what you thought about this fight, and who'd you have winning?
Okay. Well, I can say that I still pretty much had it the same. Who I thought won, except one thing. Like I said, I changed at the end of the end of the fight was round 12, and people always say, well, that was a 10-9 round or a 9-9 round or a 10-9. For me, I felt in that 12th round when we saw Fury go down, he got up like the Undertaker coming out of the coffin, like he just rose out of from being dead, and I think in that moment, as it happened really quick, I was like, holy shit, like Wilder actually just did what I think most of us feared he would do, was lose pretty much every single round and then knock him out. Because we've seen it in his last couple fights, twice against Ortiz, where Ortiz was outboxing him and then he lands the freaking equalizer that everybody says, and put him down twice. So I think that was my fear watching this fight the very first time, was I thought that was what would happen, that Wilder would land something at the very end or somewhere where he actually would hurt Tyson Fury. But now that I could watch this comfortably and not worry that Wilder would land something and put a stop to Fury, like I felt a little more comfortable scoring the rounds. I knew what to expect at the very end, other than just changing what I thought my score was. I only gave Wilder rounds 5 and 8, and the swing rounds for me were 1, 5, and 12. And I say 12 was swing round because, like I said, I changed the score. It might sound crazy, but I gave that one a tie because as soon as Fury got up, he pretty much won every second of that round from then on. So I still thought Fury won this one. I have Fury winning pretty much every single round again, like I said, except for 5 and 8. Turned out to be a great trilogy. I know a lot of people weren't excited for that third fight, but when that fight happened, it went down as one of the greatest. I'm not going to say the greatest trilogy or the greatest heavyweight fight, but you could throw it up there as one of the greatest trilogies or one of the greatest fights that they had for the third time. And as far as skill wise, when I saw it the first time, that's pretty much what I thought Fury would do, because we've seen what good boxers can do to Wilder, like an offset him. I hate to use like that. Wilder is a really shitty boxer, but he just lacks basics. He just lacks the basics. Yeah, he was an Olympian, bronze medalist. I think at the time when he won the bronze medal, he was the only U.S. Olympian to win a medal. I could be wrong, but I think that's what I remember. So that does kind of say something that, those skills are actually there, that he could have actually done something. But it turned out the way I thought it would. Fury would show a superior boxing, would show great jab, good footwork, Make Wilder miss. Wilder was a little tentative. You could tell that he wasn't too sure of himself, and you could see him start to wear down. But overall, like, I scored this. I gave it 117-108 for Fury. Robbery. When we look at it and we scored overall, and we try to call it a robbery or controversial, it was a robbery because they gave it a draw. They pretty much said that Wilder won enough rounds to make this a draw even. So I feel like it was a robbery, even though I only thought Wilder only won the 2 rounds that he did get the knockdowns in 5 and 8. So robbery for me.
All right, George. Great breakdown, man. Thank you so much. And then Run PMC, I know you didn't have a chance to score this one, but you have your notes and you kind of remember how you had it, man. So based on your memory, like, what do you remember about this fight? How'd you have it? Who'd you have winning, and do you consider it a robbery?
I remember, like you said, I don't have a scorecard. I didn't have time to rescore, but I remember those earlier rounds, probably the first 3 rounds. I gave a few of those to Wilder just because I just thought he was doing more, and there really wasn't much going on after that. Outside of the knockdowns, I had Fury winning every round. But if you were to calculate that, I think I had it probably a closer, narrower victory for Tyson Fury. But I don't think it was a draw. I think he should have won. But I think, because I don't think you can really justify as many, like that many. I think the rounds you could only justify for Wilder winning outside the knockdown rounds would be some of those first 3 rounds. But besides that, I think Fury just put on boxing lesson, and then just had lapses in judgment at times where that's where he was knocked down. I mean, the second knockdown, you can't really do anything about that. But I think I had Tyson Fury with a slight victory, but it's hard for me to say robbery, but I think that you can classify it as a robbery because I do think Tyson Fury did win, but I can't really say that because I don't have a scorecard to see, because I don't know, because as you know, when we score boxing, it's round by round. It's just totaled at the end. So I don't know exactly what I had. But I would say maybe not a robbery, but I think Tyson Fury should have won the fight.
All right. Thank you very much, Run PMC. Well, it looks like Nopal dipped out for a split second, so I'm going to go ahead and talk about what I saw. Like, I tend to see this fight the way that you do, Run PMC. Actually, well, you know what? Nopal looks like he's back, so let's get him on, and then I will go afterwards. Nopal. All right, man. Well, it looks like Run PMC went. He said it was also a robbery. What do you think, Nopal? Like, how'd you have this fight, brother?
Well, I actually had this fight for Wilder. I noticed that and I understand, Wilder was the, hardest puncher in the heavyweight division. He's a dangerous man, and I thought that Tyson Fury fought scared, and I saw he was feigning a lot, trying to get Wilder off of his movement, and so I gave Wilder the first 2 rounds. I scored round 3. I made that a 10-10 round because I thought nobody took it. I thought that was a swing. Then I gave 4 and 5 to Wilder also. Round 6, I did it. I scored that round even. Round 7. Now round 7, I gave that to Fury because he started landing a little bit, and round 8, equal round, another equal round. Round 9, I absolutely gave that to Wilder because I made that a 10-8 round because it was a knockdown. Round 10, I gave that round to Fury. I thought he did. I thought he pulled that one off. Round 11, I made that an equal round. I think they both did okay. And then round 12, I made that a 10-8 round because yes, Wilder got the knockdown. And I don't think that I didn't really appreciate the too much. I think it was okay, but I don't think that it was enough to even it out or anything like that. But I do believe that or I this is one thing I wanted to ask you guys, your opinions. Okay, so even if the other guy was to win the round, like say that you knock a guy down and then the other guy gets up and wins the round. I mean, what's that going to be? Because if you a normal knockdown is going to be 10-8, right? So if the other guy ends up winning the round after he gets up, what you just only supposed to give him 1 point, so that would still be a 10-9 round, in my opinion. I'm not sure. What do you guys think?
With that, I think you have to do a lot to be able to win a round, and or make it like a 9-8 round or however they would score that. I think you would really have to do a lot to warrant that, because I think a knockdown, since they're pretty rare in boxing, that I think you should be rewarded with them. Like, also, that's why I don't like as well. I guess that's the same thing. I just don't like where they're like, oh, well, this guy ended up winning the round, even though the other guy scored a knockdown, because I think you need to be rewarded for that. Like, that's why I also don't like I don't like 10-8 rounds if there isn't a knockdown, because I just don't. I think the knockdown should be rewarded, and I think sometimes you give too much power to the judges to manipulate things when you do that. Like, I wish it was like, if you were to like completely the only way I would see it is if, say, you get a knockdown within the first like minute or somewhat early in the round, then the other guy goes on to just beat down the guy that got the knockdown, then I could see that being an even round. But
but how do you even make that an even round run when the guy already did a knockdown? So what I'm saying is, the best you could do, even if you proceeded to get up and win the round, I think the best you could do is a 10-9 round, and the other guy who knocked you down, that's what I'm saying, because it's 1 point for winning the round and it's 1 point for knocking the guy down. So what does that make it?
How would that
or
be?
2 points?
That's what I'm would you change it to a 9-9?
No, I was thinking, in my opinion, it should just be a 10-9 round. Like,
yeah, I get it.
Slightly.
I get what you're saying. I just don't know how the rules are with the judging.
Yeah.
I don't remember, because obviously it's 10-point. I don't remember how it would be scored if you would do that. I just don't, because I don't think. Yeah, I'm just unsure.
Yeah, because people were going heavily on that right there. That, oh well, he evened it out by winning the round, but I don't think there was enough time for him to do enough to even that out in the least. So I had to score that a 10-8 on both rounds.
Because then if we do that, then do we score on how severe a knockdown was? Like, oh, like Fury was knocked down very hard, but that scored the same as a flash knockdown. So if someone's hit with a flash knockdown, do we now score it's easier to make it easier to make that round an even round if it's only a flash knockdown opposed to like a devastating knockdown? I think it's just a slippery slope with that, and it gives too much power to the judges.
I mean, so those are fair points. And on top of that too, like Fury barely beat the count. Like, it's also because he's such a big dude, so like when he finally started getting up, probably took like 4 or 5 seconds to actually do it.
Yeah.
But I mean, he took the full damn near 10 seconds to get up. That's for damn sure.
It looked to me like he was taking a breather down there. It didn't necessarily look like he was in that big of trouble. His head did hit the back, but he didn't. To me, it looked like he was taking a breather, and then, okay, time to get up. Let's go.
It reminded me of when Danny Jacobs lost to Dimitri Pirog, when he was knocked down and his like eyes were closed, and then he snapped to it, but they called it. So it's even though I think Danny Jacobs was I think he gave up in that fight. No, I'm just kidding. No, but that's what it reminded me of. First thing I saw is because Danny Jacobs was lying on the canvas with his eyes closed, and then snapped to it, and the ref had already called it, and he seemed to be he had his wits with him. So it was just, that's what I mean, even though I think Jack Reese tries to inject himself in too many fights, I think that's a fantastic job of refereeing, because I understand, like, I don't understand why they don't give boxers the full count. Like, give him the full count. Like, 2 seconds isn't going to be the difference. And then if he gets up and you don't like what you see, then you call it. Just don't call it when they're on the ground, unless it's like face down, like there's no way he's getting up.
Damn, never thought about it like that. That's true.
These are things that we need to talk about, since we do a lot of rescoring. So I'm glad that we had this opportunity to discuss that. Nevertheless, my scorecard, because of all the even rounds, ended up being 118, 114 Deontay Wilder. And I do consider this a robbery for Wilder.
Oh,
damn.
The other way around completely. I was in shock that there was a ref a judge that gave it 114, 110 Fury. I thought that was completely wrong. And, but I think the fairest thing, because there's so many people that see it one-sided, half of the people are going to see it the other way, the other half the other way. I think the draw was the most, the best thing that could happen, for this trilogy that we had.
Well, thank you very much, Nopal. That was a great breakdown. So a robbery, but for the other guy, I don't think that's ever happened in the history of our rescores. So great, man. That was great. Thanks, Nopal. And I kind of see it the way that Run PMC and Nopal do. Like it just like in terms of like the early rounds being a little bit more competitive. So like I did give Wilder that first round. I didn't think there was much to go between. Like it was a lot of feel out rounds. It was actually excellent to go back and just take a look at that fight because I hadn't seen it in years. But I do remember thinking that I felt that the early rounds were a bit closer in general when the fight happened. And I didn't necessarily think that it was a robbery at the time. So when I rewatched this fight, I gave Wilder round 10. And I think you could conceivably give him round 2 as well. But then I gave Wilder, of course, I gave him round 7. I thought round 7 was pretty close, but I felt like Wilder was doing good work. And then the 2 10-8 rounds, round 9, and then round 12. And I do give 10-8 rounds. Like maybe I need to evolve my thoughts on it. I'll tell you this, like, I always tend to give the fighter who knocks the other fighter down like a 10-8 round. I don't think that I've ever made that exception. Fury did win the rest of that round, but even after he got up, there was a good solid, I don't know, like 20 seconds. I mean, until there was like about a minute left where Wilder was trying to finish off Fury and Fury was just trying to survive. Not trying to survive. He started fighting back on the inside. Like that's the other thing I enjoyed about this fight. And we can get into it a little bit more once we start talking about this fight. But the one thing I really enjoyed about this fight was Fury's footwork, right? I mean, that's kind of been non-existent at this level since this fight, in my opinion. It was nice to see him go in and as well as fight well on the inside, slip all those punches against a dangerous man. Like it was a lot of fun to watch him just kind of like miss those haymakers, put his hands behind his back, On top of that too, like I forgot how much Wilder was moving backwards. When you think about that fight, like if you haven't watched it, I guess in my head, like I kind of remember like, Wilder always trying to get to him and maybe Fury just like, trying to avoid the engagement and just kind of pot shot his way towards winning. But no, there was a lot of back and forth. I think that Tyson Fury did a lot of things well that he showed very well, and he did more in the second and the third fight. And I could see why maybe he did a trainer switch because Ben Davison was all about being cautious. But I think Fury already knew that he had some type of advantage or something that he could do that would be new to Wilder that he wouldn't necessarily be able to handle. Like you could see in this fight that he has zero issues ever tying up Wilder at will. So he utilizes that very well, in my opinion. And on top of that, he's landing some good leather too. His 1-2s, like they look a little painful. I think there's a reason that Wilder just wasn't coming in. Like he would kind of like, choose his spots and then also kind of do that thing where he's kind of like looking both ways, pretending like he's looking for an angle, but not really going in or doing anything about it. Like I don't think that he was chasing Fury, although Fury was really good at being just outside of the pocket. Like he dictated the footwork the whole time, in my opinion. And with that, with just giving Wilder a couple rounds, I had it scored for Fury 114, 112, but I think that you could easily give Fury I think you could easily give Wilder round 2, and if you did, like you have a draw. Like in my opinion, like I don't think a draw is too far fetched for me based on what I saw. But I thoroughly enjoyed this fight. And I kind of like how split we all are on it. It's good to get different perspectives on it. And I learned a lot by watching this fight. So if anybody has any final thoughts on this fight or the overall trilogy or how that will affect what you anticipate as far as like, well, we could save like the Fury versus Wilder fight here in just a second because we're going over that next. But does anybody have any final thoughts on this fight before we wrap it up?
I just think at times that maybe I do this. I can't speak for everyone else, but at times I think we romanticize the boxing of the past. And granted, I don't think these guys are the heavyweights of the past, like skill wise, but they're also way bigger than the heavyweights of the past. So it's hard to carry like the same athleticism and the work rate as those guys. Cause these guys, if you were to like, I don't think you should do it, but if yours to be a super like heavyweight class, Wilder won't fit in their weight, but size wise he does. But Fury's definitely like a super heavyweight. If you were to have a super heavyweight, like the UFC, everything above 260 is a super heavyweight. I think it's 260 or 265. So Wilder won't fit in there, but Fury's definitely like a big guy, and them of that stature. It would be interesting to see in the past of how well, like if Wilder, you put him back in like the 80s or even like back in like the 60s, 70s, how he would do against those heavyweights just with the power. Because he's just like, it's still a big guy, and it's like the power is real, even though his boxing skills will be nowhere near. It would almost be like back then if he could survive and just try to land punches. Well, it's sort of what he does now, but I don't know. I think we got to see a great trilogy, and the last fight. I mean, each fight had their own excitement. Like the first fight Wilder Wilder knocks down Fury twice, and then Fury is rallying at the end, and then he gets up from that knockdown where we thought it might be over. And then the second fight, Wilder pops his eardrum. I don't care what he says, that was a ruptured eardrum. And then Fury dominates in this last fight. It was a sort of a one-sided beatdown, but they had their moments, and like that's all you can really ask from a trilogy.
Definitely an excellent trilogy, and those are great points.
I wanted to also say, man, Fury's a great actor, bro. I was about to give him the first round just alone on the way he puts his hands up. You know what I mean? Those WWE antics, bro. He's got a way of kind of like stealing the momentum with his, just the way he acts with looking like he's very confident, but you can tell he wasn't really fighting like that. I mean, definitely you can see that this was a total experiment for Tyson Fury to see if he could handle Wilder. And there's moments where you could see that he's like, let me do it and go forward, and he totally pushes Wilder back. And you could see that he totally overpowers him just for enough time for him to know, after like the 7th round, I think he kind of knew, he probably had it in his head, well, if I lose this fight, I'm going to get the rematch, and I'm going to switch my whole game plan up, and I'm probably going to get the knockout. So, for me, I really enjoyed this rescore.
Yep.
Me too, man. And Nando co-signs what you have to say. No, Paul. He says that now there's a narrative bias looking back, and the other thing that I'd like to add too is, I mentioned before about how Fury could tie up at will. And you could really see this in the second and third fight. Wilder still hadn't seen Fury's inside game yet. And it was always there. If you go back to like the Steve Cunningham fight, if you go back to a lot of Fury's fight, like he has an excellent skill set in general before he came across Sugar Hill. And then, they started turning over his punches and started fine tuning that style that maybe might suit him in his mid 30s. Like, but I'll tell you what, like you could even tell in that third fight, like early on, in that third fight, there was that rumor that Fury got information that Wilder's game plan was to come out and go right to him, to start off hot, to try to execute Tyson Fury. And you could see Tyson Fury still got a little bit of that footwork, showing respect, being a little bit patient, but the way he would tie up, you could see he was just kind of like, lightly, like, just jabbing the ribs. And I'm sitting there going, okay, well, this guy's just drawing it out. Like, he's not really showing his inside game yet. He's just allowing Wilder kind of to work, like, and he's much smaller as far as like physical frame. So, Wilder sitting there, like, exerting energy and strength, thinking that like he's matching Fury on the inside, but Fury's just kind of just handling him before he starts really fighting on the inside. And so, I mean, you could see the evolution of what Tyson Fury does, and it's a great trilogy. We're all better for having watched it all. I think trilogies in general are underrated, and we really don't get that many, especially that were that good. Like all those fights were good in real time.
Yeah, you're right. And when you fight somebody 3 times, like you either improve, you do something different from the last fight, and that's exactly what you saw, right? Like you said, Fury in the first fight, I think he wanted to kind of gauge himself to see where if he could take, Wilder's best shots, because again, Wilder has shown in past fights where he's getting outboxed and then the other person makes a mistake and all of a sudden the fight is over. And I think once Fury knew that he was able to take his shots and get up, just like the 12th round. So like when I saw it the first time, I thought immediately it was over. But then when you watch it over and over, you're watching highlights over the year, over the month, and then rewatching it again, you knew he wasn't really that hurt, but you could see him taking a breath. And that's the same thing I was going to say, no problem, was that it looked like he was taking like a breath, and he got up, and he is a bigger guy. So, it's going to take him a little bit longer to get up. But trilogies, they're hard to really, to impress. And with that one, I think even the third fight, I think the fight we really wanted to see, of course, was the AJ, but, through the contracts and everything, they had to fight each other. And it turned out to be a great third fight and a great trilogy because, again, anytime, at any given moment, Wilder could have done anything to end that fight. And in the third fight, I feel like Fury wasn't as in shape as he was in the second fight. I think the second Fury was like the best Fury of the 3 because he looked like he was more solid. But he does carry that tire around his body a little bit in all his fights. But in the third fight, I feel like I don't know, maybe he just was trying to make it, fun or whatever. But the best Fury out of the 3, I think, was the second one. He looked like he was determined to end this fight early. I don't know if he was trying to make it entertaining in the third fight, but it definitely was entertaining. Everybody enjoyed it. But and then I think going back to I wanted to add to the 12th round, with the point thing. I think everybody kind of has their own opinion or how to score it, right? And I agree with all your guys' points exactly. I think the guy that does get the knockdown should automatically obviously get the 10 points. Like if you really overall think about it, that's why I've kind of been sitting quiet because I'm kind of playing it in my head to see what would make sense. And I think that does make sense. I think you should automatically just get that 10 points regardless if the other guy, comes back and wins the second part of the round. And I only think that if that 10 goes away is if the other guy was to get the knockdown. So you got, a knockdown from each guy. So I think that's when that 10 goes away and then it evens out the score. So I think logically, what I should have done scored instead of have it 9-9, it could have been 10-9, right? Like you give Fury back his point that was taken away from a knockdown. So, I mean, again, all great points. And I think like if they were to agree on it, I think that would be probably the best way is keep that 10 and, not take it away. And then the guy that got knocked down, he ends up winning the round, depending on how impressive he won that round. Then you either give him the point or you keep it at 10-8.
And you know what, Georgie, the truth with that whole situation is there's no right answer, because even with that just makes it even more confusing because somebody still has to win the round. So in reality, it's like you saw, like me, I just decided to do on the swing rounds, do 10-10 rounds, and nobody ever does that anyways. In actuality, the judges don't do that, but we got
They used to.
Yeah. I mean, maybe they should, or maybe they shouldn't. I don't know. We're all going to score them how we want or whatever. I just thought that we had to have that discussion about the about how to score that, if the guy ends up winning the round and, he gets knocked down, that sort of thing, because it was a big focal point of what people that thought Fury got robbed were saying, is that, oh, well, he got knocked down, but he ended up winning the round. So,
Yeah. I didn't give him the round. I just felt like it took away the 10 and it gave Fury the point. So it kind of like he took away the 10, added to the 9, made it 9-9. But I think you're right.
9-9.
I think overall, like when someone does get a knockdown, regardless, it should stay at 10 unless the other guy gets a knockdown. Then it becomes like an evened out round. But yeah, I enjoyed everybody's points. I don't think anybody was wrong. I think everybody made a great argument for how they felt, that 12th round went.
Were you guys happy with the draw?
I thought the draw was fair, but I guess the other dudes thought it was a robbery. So I mean, I don't know. What do you think, guys? I mean,
I was happy with the draw.
I think Fury won.
Yeah, I think Fury won too. Yeah.
Well, he ultimately was the winner of the trilogy, man. And like I said, that was great trilogy. I found myself missing Wilder too watching this fight.
Hell
I thought,
yeah,
it'd be good to have him back, dude.
Yeah, for sure. I agree.
I'm gonna have to go get a little Bronze Bomber t-shirt, man. He's got some good merch. I'll tell you, he has the shirts that say "Till This Day." I think he's got the one that says "Yo Peoples" too. I think he has. I forget what else he got, man. He got so much classic lines, dude. I miss that dude.
Yeah, I absolutely. I respect his career like to the fullest, even though some people don't agree with that. He's the best skilled overall. Like he was a walking highlight. This guy was a walking highlight. Every fight he had was somehow a highlight. Even in the ones he lost, right? Because the second fight they both knocked each other down. The third fight they both knocked each other down. And at any given moment, he could just end that fight. And I know there was a point maybe at the beginning of the year, or even last year, where they weren't sure if Wilder was going to come back because he was saying, he was going to stay with his daughter. He wants to focus more on his family. And me and Julian kind of did like a small tribute. We're like, look, you know what? At the end of the day, like I respect everything that Wilder did, and he was a highlight, man. It was awesome to see. Like, for me, when I watch boxing and see I don't care what happens if it's the guy outpointed, the guy got the knockout. However, like I respect all styles of fights, and I even respected Wilder's style of fight too, even though he may not have the basics down. But I mean, shit, dude, at any given moment, he was gonna knock you out. He was gonna make you a highlight. It was like that posterized dunk.
I mean, that's a great point. I mean, does Dillian Whyte have the best fundamentals? Like, and I'll tell you this, like when we've been going back and rescoring the old fights, like it led to me, and I don't know if I've told you guys this, like going back and and I've heard this point before, like going back and watching old George Foreman fights, and that guy wasn't a very good boxer. I wouldn't say, oh, this guy's got great skill set. He was a highlight guy too, just a strong. Well, he had more like strength. I feel like Wilder has just like this KO type down the hatch, bam, type power, but George Foreman was just like this beast. You know what I mean?
Like a bulldozer. You just wear you down.
Oh, yeah. Well, hey, man, let's feature, because we could keep talking about this, but that just goes to show how much respect we have for the heavyweight titans here. And we're going to talk about our next rescore real quick. So this is what we got next. Let me show you all here. We've got Oscar Valdez versus Conceição. Now, the Al Chile crew was rolling when this fight happened the last time, and there was controversy at the time when we kind of touched base on it, but hell, man, we're still rolling, and we got kind of a new lineup, and I think it's appropriate with the Shakur versus Valdez fight coming up this next weekend. Like, it'd be a great time for us to take a look at this film and see if we think this was indeed a robbery. A lot of people think of it as a modern day robbery, so I'm pretty excited about this one.
Oh yeah. I want to rescore that one, even though it's in the back of my mind. I don't want to do it, but you know what? For the purposes of Al Chile, man, I got to do it.
We got to do it. You know what? It's like pulling teeth getting the scorecards for Valdez Conceição sometimes. I'm telling you, nobody wants to talk about how they had it, but we're going to talk about it because we're not scared to go anywhere here at Al Chile, man.
I think I'm trying to think how I had that. I think I had Valdez edging that one though. George was there, right? You were there?
Yeah, I was there, and
yeah.
George, you were in this episode?
Yeah. No, I was.
He was
at the fight in person.
Oh, yeah. That's right. You were in Tucson. That's right.
yeah, I was there in person, man.
I think me and Run were talking about it when it happened, huh? Because it happened like on a Friday, huh? Run.
Yeah, it was a Friday.
Yeah. I think. I mean, we'll have to rescore it, but I feel like I had Valdez coming on at the end, but which is sort of weird though, because I usually favor the guys that are boxing more. So, but that's just what I think I remember. I think I had Valdez winning. But that'd be a good one to rescore, definitely.
Oh yeah, and plus it'll help us with our breakdown for next week, man, because it's always great to look at film. And I'll tell you, man, it benefited me to take a look at Wilder versus Fury 1 and then kind of look at some highlights because, dude, we have one hell of a fight coming up. Like, this train is just rolling along. We have the lineal WBC champ, the undefeated champion, facing Dillian Whyte this weekend coming up, man. I'm excited about this fight. Let's start with you, Run. Like, what do you think about this fight, man? Who do you have winning?
It definitely would be a great fight if you were in the UK and you wanted to go watch I mean, it would have been pretty hard to get tickets because they sell out within like an hour or something crazy.
90,000. It's at Wembley. Very impressive,
that's crazy.
Man. 90,000 people.
I mean, that is impressive. I think it's Fury's fight to lose. Honestly, I think it really depends what type of Fury we get because you've seen Fury. He fights up to the competition, exceeds expectations, but then also fights like below the competition, and then is just leaves you wondering. So, and with the heavyweights, I mean, the last thing to go is power, but these guys are getting older and older, and we'll have to see really because it was a very physical fight. Even though Fury, I think, dominated Wilder in the third fight, it was still very physical for him, and Wilder wasn't landing as clean of punches and was still putting him down. So we're going to see how much he has. But as for Dillian Whyte, I mean, I'm not the biggest fan, honestly. I mean, it's a good fight domestically, but I know some people have opinions of Dillian saying like, oh, but he's beaten these guys. But it's like, I don't really think highly of like Derek Chisora or those guys either. So I just think he was more of a high level domestic level fighter that got a lot of shine when they're building up AJ because he put AJ down in the amateurs. And I think it was just more of that. And then he's riding off those coattails. And it's shocking to me that a guy like Whyte can get a mandatory after he gets a well, that's a good picture. But he gets a mandatory again after he was knocked out. And it's amazing to me that he was kept on as a mandatory after the debacle with the gloves in the Rivas fight and also him testing positive. I know the beef sample came negative, but why did it take so long for that? I just think that was fishy that the beef sample took that long to be proven or for it to be retested because it's not like there was a shortage of labs that you could have done that. So it's just weird. I'm not the biggest fan fan of Whyte. I think I pick Fury to win. I don't know how it will be done because I really just don't know what Fury we're getting. So I'll be safe and say unanimous decision, but a dominating performance. But I just really, I think it would be a great fight to go to, but I don't think it's like a high level fight. And it's finally, but it's good to just clear out that mandatory from the WBC, that being the Dillian Whyte, because we have to hear 600 days, 800 days that he's been a mandatory. It's like, okay, that's enough.
Damn. So a good domestic level fight. I like that. Very carefully
Yes.
worded run. I like that.
Yes.
All right. Nopal, what do you think about this fight, man?
Man, it's like a throwaway fight to me, bro. I think it's a UK thing. Yeah. It'll be all right. I'm glad, I get to see it. It's cool.
Yeah, it's
It's whatever to me, bro. I
Great
don't
breakdown,
know
Nopal. Thank you, brother.
I don't know what the big deal is.
short
about
and
it.
sweet and straight to the point.
This
Yeah.
guy's been arguing about it. He's got to fight him. He's ducking Whyte, bro. Who cares? Who the heck is Whyte? Just a dude that's always losing.
So you got Fury winning.
Yeah, of course. Unless he decides to just throw his career away, because he is saying that he wants to retire after this. Of course, he wants to duck that Usyk smoke. So whatever. It is what it is.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you this, dude. The odds for this fight are the exact same as the Spence versus Ugas fight. They're the same. And nobody really seems to be picking Whyte or think that he has much of a chance at all. So, George, break this fight down for us, man. What do you see?
I mean, Brun said it good, man. A good domestic UK fight. I mean, maybe it's a little, happening, I guess, a little too late in their careers. I don't know if there was a time where they could have fought sooner. 600 days, 800 days, whatever. I mean, for boxing, I mean, I'm excited, right? It's in the UK. I guess as far as buying it, I mean, I might have to get a couple of my buddies to pitch in and just to watch it, or maybe you could just watch it later on YouTube for free, or stream it somehow. But I mean, it's not that bad of a fight. And the same thing, questions, right? We want to see how Fury's going to come in, especially after having a trilogy, like in that third fight against Fury. It looked like it took a little something out of him, because we weren't sure if, I mean, I think in the second knockdown in the Wilder fight, I was like, if he gets knocked down one more time, I don't think he's going to get up. He just looks way too exhausted. So, even though he did win that fight convincingly, I think the question for me, at least for me, is I want to know what Fury is going to show up. And we've also seen that Fury is vulnerable to get hurt. Whyte usually has a good couple rounds, in him in the beginning, where obviously he's coming out kind of fresh. So I think for Whyte, I think if he knows that Fury's been hurt and been dropped, I think he takes that and tries to end this early. And Nando said this too, that it is the heavyweight division. Anything can happen. So you want to see what will happen in this one. But if I'm picking, I'm going to pick Fury. I would say if a good Fury shows up, I could see him maybe getting a late stoppage, if not a unanimous decision. But I'm excited for it. It's a heavyweight division. Anything can happen. Again, we see Fury get put down. Whyte does have enough power to put him away. I think he has a slightly better gas tank than Wilder, though, at least in that third fight. So let's see what happens.
I mean, those are great points, man. I think great points all around, fellas. But no, dude, that was great. Like, I agree. Like, I think that Whyte does have a slightly better gas tank. I also think he's not scared to just go in there and see what happens. Like, in that third fight with Fury, I think Wilder really did kind of go for it, but he was hesitant before that in the first and the second fight. And, he ultimately got to go out on his shield. But I think that Whyte got more in the tank, and I think he's just a naturally much stronger guy. So I'll be curious to see what the inside fighting looks like. I think that Fury could dance around for maybe a few rounds, but eventually they're just going to have to start exchanging. And like I've always said, I think that Fury's kind of like this throwback, gypsy, back alley, 1700s type, we'll fight you in an alleyway type dude. Like the way he fights, like it's so old school. I love his inside fighting. I think that his inside fighting will ultimately prevail. But yeah, dude, Fury has gone down. Now, in that third fight, like, and this is just what I saw, like in the during that second knockdown, like I felt like he kind of made the choice to go down, like in slow mo. Like if you ask me, like when you watch it, I felt like he was kind of like, oh shit, you know, I just got hit pretty good. Like I don't need another right hand. Like I'm going down right now, and I felt like it was kind of a reset. But that's how I saw things. But you know, Wilder is just tremendously good with that right hand. Like, but this could be a fight of attrition. Like, you know, I ended up taking a look at that Otto Wallin fight to kind of see what I could glean from that one. That was a fight where, you know, Fury did have some trouble. Now, granted, this was with Ben Davison, but like I said, based on what I saw in that first Wilder Fury fight, like I think that he already had the style. Somebody just needed to say, yeah, we are going to fight that way, and let's fine tune that, you know. So I don't know, man. You know, I think Dillian Whyte could make it ugly. I think he's got nothing to lose. This guy's about to get paid, you know, and these guys both know each other. Like I kind of like how friendly they are with each other. Like to me, Fury's a guy who doesn't seem to hold grudges, and I think that and I don't know if you guys saw their press conference today, you know, but Big John Fury tried to start trouble during the stare down. It was fucking hilarious. And Tyson Fury, you know, and Dillian Whyte, to his credit, were both kind of like trying to back off their entourages, and Tyson Fury had to turn around and be like, back up, you back up. You know, and it's just like that shows you like when you're really like in charge of your entourage. You know what I mean? Like Jamal Charlo. Like I don't know if you saw him exchange with David Benavidez, but he was like piping up, and then he went to hide behind a security guard who works for him to keep talking, right? You know what I mean? Come on, give me a break. Like Fury shows what it's like to actually be in charge of an entourage, quiet his team, quiet his father down, you know, and to shake Dillian Whyte's hand. So I'm looking forward to this fight. I do think that this might be Fury's last fight. He said that. And I think that he means it. Like when he says, I'm going to leave, like, I don't think it's just like this ploy for attention. I think that he's going to leave. But you never know with Tyson Fury. He could also be just change his mind. Like he says he wants to go live an isolated life and just be himself. And it's like, you know, he's got, you know, good looking wife, beautiful family, all the money that he could possibly need. And he's always said, and I believe him, that like, you know, I don't need to be rich to be happy. I'm like that too, although I'm not rich, you know, but I still believe that. And Dillian Whyte, I'm happy for him too. Like, I don't really know what his family life is like. I think he's got a lot of kids, which is great. You know what I mean? So, and on top of that too, he's had a rough life, you know, and he says, hey man, you know, this isn't that bad. Like I just come to work and then I'm just going to go away like I do. So I'm really happy for both these guys, but I ultimately see Fury pulling this off. Although I think this fight's a lot closer than people are saying. Like I would not be surprised if there was an upset or some kind of like scary moment in general. This is heavyweight boxing and anything can happen.
Yeah.
Did you guys get a chance to watch, real quick, did you get a chance to watch any of the media day workouts?
I saw a small bit of it. Fury did look a little soft for my liking.
Yeah, definitely. He's looking definitely trimmer than before. So I don't know if that's a part of the game plan, because it seems like he brought his weight up a lot, and he was working with when he was bringing his weight up to fight Wilder to use his weight against him. He was using George Lockhart, who was Conor McGregor's nutritionist back when he was fighting and he was training out of Vegas. So maybe he's looking to put on a show and not box and maybe break down Whyte that way. So it should be interesting. Should be an interesting fight. And just like what the comment says, is what it is. Can't just has to. I can't say it any better than that.
Hey man, it is what it is, dude.
Yeah.
I mean, it's an AM fight, or you know, I mean,
Yeah.
it's you know, it's hard to get the homies over like at 12 o'clock. You know, well, I mean, I don't know how y'all roll in Tucson. You could throw them back at noon, George, or what?
Oh man, no. I mean, I know some guys that can. I would say like the last month, yeah, when I were at my parents' house, you know, I found myself drinking, doing a little bit more day drinking. So who knows? Maybe I might crack one open in the afternoon. Who knows?
Well, you know, this is a great fight to look forward to, man. Yep. We're just starting this awesome string of fights. So I want you guys to enjoy. I want to thank the panel for coming through like they always do. George with Off the Ropes Boxing and MMA, Run, PMC. Oh, dude, that reminds me, Run, real quick. Dude, I don't know if you know this. I don't know if you've seen it on Power Punchers, but D-Style's calling you out for like a trivia quiz challenge kind of thing. What do you think about that, man?
Oh, is he?
Yeah, dude, he wants a little bit of a smoke, and I told him, I was like, man, you don't know what you're asking for. You know, we got the hired gun of HCP right here, and you're asking for that smoke. But I mean, I think I think he respects your knowledge, and I don't know. What do you think, man? I mean, should I give him an official Al Chile response or what?
No, I mean, once I get my work schedule changed, that I'm sure it could happen. So, I mean, like as you know, like I had a lot of personal stuff going on over the last little bit, but yeah, once everything gets good, I mean, I watched it on archive, but I just haven't been able to make the live show.
Nice, man. You know, and I'll represent you. Make sure that this whole thing's fair. You know, make sure we don't get A-sided.
Right,
All
right.
Hey, I'm there tomorrow. I got you, Run. I got you.
All
That's
right.
funny.
And then also for the homie, Nopo Boxeanos. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Have a great one. Peace.